Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I want to share with you a bait that is gaining a ton of attention on the underground scene. And by underground, what I mean is the high level tournament anglers, high level, really successful local anglers. This is a bait that a lot of people are utilizing right now and having very, very successful days. For a long period of time, we thought of it much more as a warm water bait, but we've really identified how good it is in all water temperatures. And I personally think we're going to see some very, very high tournament finishes on this particular bait here in this upcoming season. And it may even happen at the first event of the year and some of the first events of the year, which are down in Texas this year. And it's just a bait that the guys that know how powerful it is have really seen how good it can be. But there's a lot of anglers out there that have not experienced how good a hair jig can be. Now, this particular hair jig is one of my favorites. This is the Picasso FX jig. Couple of things about hair jigs. So let's give a little background on this. You know, a bucktail jig or a hair jig, whatever you want to call it, has been around for a really long time. You know, if you're an angler that's been fishing for 50, 60 years, a hair jig was around back then. In fact, a lot of the flea markets I go to, a lot of the garage sales, I still find bucktail jigs that are out there. There were a lot of inline spinners that used them as their dressing, like we still see on some MEPS type baits today. But there's always been kind of a bucktail jig around. Now, in my opinion, we really didn't see it gain much attention in the bass world until some of the top level pros like Kevin Van Dam started having a lot of success in ledge tournaments on the Tennessee River system. So Kentucky Lake, Chickamauga, Pickwick, places like that, we started to see a lot of guys do very, very well with it. I'm going to say 7, 8 years ago. Now, at the same time, a lot of the hardcore northern smallmouth anglers were using bucktail jigs, but on a smaller level. So hair jigs, marabou, bucktail, a bunch of different kind of your hair jigs, and dominating the smallmouth world. And this was, I'm going to say, 10 years ago as well. Well, during that time, really what's happened is there's been a lot more people that have started using them. They're using them for all species of bass, and they're finding how good they are both in the cold water period and the warm water period. So from that standpoint, there's a lot of anglers out there that have been utilizing these really to their advantage. I will say now, though, with the progression of forward-facing sonar, what we're starting to see is a lot more guys utilize these in place of a minnow, and there's a lot of advantages to it. First and foremost, you can catch 100 fish on this and not go through any baits. You also generally, depending on the hair jig, now if you're using one that runs properly, what they're going to do is they're going to suspend in the water column in a good horizontal position, and that's one of the reasons I love this bait. If you've got a bait that runs really well horizontally and it's got the right composition in it, you can actually retrieve it and almost suspend it in place just by popping your rod tip the same way you would a minnow. But there is something special about some of the materials here that seems to generate bites. It really gives it a lifelike appearance. It's a little bit different than your minnow profiles right now. And what we're finding is a lot of guys are having more success on these versus the minnow. Now, one of the cool things about them, though, is you're not necessarily limited to just suspending fish. I've had excellent success fishing them down ledges the same way you might be popping a football jig or stroking a jig down the ledge in super deep water. I've had great days fishing suspended fish with them. I've had great days fishing really light ones in shallow rock flats fishing for smallmouth. Like, they are very, very good fish catching baits. Now, I want to point out a couple of things about this one specific that I think make it really special. So first and foremost, laser sharp hook. That is one of the keys anytime you're throwing a hair jig. And a lot of times, if you've used a hair jig for quite a while, what you'll find is a lot of the ones that are out there are not built on good hooks. So you want one that's built on a very high quality hook. Now, for me, I like two different types of material. And the reason for that is I get different movement and action out of both these. So in this case, This one's got both bucktail as well as some hackle feathers. So the hackle feathers are long ones. And then it's also got mixed in, you guys know if you watch my channel on a regular basis, maybe you can see it. It's got a little bit of Flashaboo material, which in my opinion is one of the best materials we use in any of our jigs that we make. But the key here is you get two different things. The bucktail gives you the ability to really kind of float in the water. It doesn't have a ton of movement, but it does have bulk. So when that compresses a little bit, it gives you a very good lifelike profile. The hackle is a little bit different in terms of it gives you actually a swimming motion. So a lot of the better jigs, in my opinion, have bucktail, that is the majority of the bait, and then the hackle will stick out the end, and that moves just like a tail in the water. And that's why it has such a natural profile. They swim very, very well. But you want the bucktail because the bucktail, when you come to a stop and you start kind of twitching your rod tip, the bucktail will flare up a little bit, and it's like putting the brakes on your bait. One of the cool things about the material. And I'm not going to lie to you, the first time I picked up a black hair jig that was next to a black marabou hair jig for smallmouth like 15 years ago, I was like, man, the marabou just looks so much better. But you get a completely different movement out of the bucktail. So there's very much a time and a place for the bucktail as well. And that's why I like to have two different materials in it, because you get two different movements out of it. You throw in the fact you've got a little Flashaboo here as your flash, your scale pattern, I guess is what I would say it imitates. You've got here a really good one. Now, you can get these in a lot of different sizes. The Picasso one I really like because you can get them in a small version, which is the 4-inch size. This is actually a 6-inch half-ounce size. You can get them all the way up to a 1 ounce, which is actually 7 inches long. So you can match the hatch in terms of the size you want. Also, you don't want to necessarily be afraid to trim it down if you do want a smaller profile or you want your bait to sink faster depending on how deep that you're fishing. You know, anytime you're talking about fishing a hair jig, personally, I think you want to be throwing it on straight fluorocarbon. I generally fish it on 15-pound test. I will go down to 12 and even potentially 10 if I'm fishing really clear conditions. But overall, I feel like 15-pound test is a good range. Straight fluorocarbon. I throw it on a 7.3 medium heavy fast action rod. And then I generally pair it up with a faster gear ratio reel. I like the Xenon X, the 8-speed. It just lets me pick up line faster in terms of, I guess, the way I'm fishing it. Generally, I like to, there's a couple of different ways to fish it. One, you can actually flutter it and keep it suspended. Another way is you let it go to the bottom, and I'll actually burn the reel to get that bait to explode off the bottom to try to get some of those reaction strikes. But ultimately, I just like having the faster gear ratio reel to pick up that line to allow me to set the hook and drive the hook home in the fish. But these things are absolute fish catchers, guys. I cannot stress enough how lifelike these look in the water. The other real major benefit is they show up extremely well on forward-facing sonar as well. They're bigger, bulkier profile than, say, your traditional minnow, which just gives you a better return on your graphs. So from that standpoint, they're really good. If you haven't thrown a hair jig yet, I really suggest you go out and give it a try. I'll put a link for this one in the video description. Like I said, this is one of my favorites that's out there. Man, just something that I'm willing to bet you we see a tournament get won this year on a hair jig. I think that's how popular it is right now with a bunch of the really good forward-facing scopers out there that I know, and I expect to see a lot of fish get caught on these. Hopefully, I'm one of them, because I'm thinking for sure this is getting tied on at my next event on Rayburn, and we're going to catch some fish with it. So if you got any questions, guys, put it in the comment section regarding hair jigs. I'd be happy to answer them for you. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.